evidence. The lawyer said he was done with that. He thought that these scum wouldn't know the truth anyway, and he needed to finish the case quickly and get some privacy with the Holy Virgin. Rael exclaimed that he had arrived to act as the fourth witness for the prosecution. The hero praised the lawyer for his efforts and added that he is unlikely to receive an award. Rael explained that the only thing Saint Christina did was whisper, even though it was said that the people she whispered to lost their way for their families. But the fact remains that Christina also claimed that they were dying to save themselves. And that doesn't change the fact that she forced them to die. People shouted that everything was right and they were almost tricked by the lawyer. Raoul praised people for their reactions, because it's good for everyone. The hero said that there are many people here who are not directly affected by Saint Christina, just like he did, because she didn't do anything directly, and only reaped the benefits of those who were encouraged. Rael decided that the rules of revenge made it very difficult to give her what she deserved. Plus, the king's lawyer will be constantly in the way. But there is still a way to mock Saint Christina. The judge called Rael to take the oath of office, and the hero swore to follow the dictates of conscience to tell the truth without hiding anything. That wasn't what Rael was thinking. Chapter 58. The judge asked Raoul to give evidence about the defendant when she was part of his group. Rael said that in public, Christina was kind and innocent and behaved as a holy virgin should, for which she was very popular. But there was another side to it. Secretly, she revived the guards and played with them, forcing them to fight over her body, exactly as stated by the first witness in the case, who was an eyewitness to such a performance. Christina asked why they were doing all this, because no one understood the meaning of her rescue and only called her a witch, and why all of them they only say nasty things about her. Christina reminded Raoul that she had worked very hard to save him and sent him to heaven, and now it's not clear why he came back, and even thinks he's a god, even though he's just a hero. She was indignant that this was complete ignorance on his part, because she had given him salvation so many times. Christina said that she did not think that Rael's soul was so rotten. Rael replied that she was wrong about heaven. After all, he rose from the very depths of hell and only with one goal: to take revenge on all those who betrayed him. Christina complimented Rael on his willingness to see her. The hero was surprised, a rather peculiar train of thought for the vicious Christina. The lawyer interrupted their conversation and said that the character of the Holy Virgin, whatever it was, is not a reason for the prosecution. Raoul said that he was very impressed with the lawyer's efforts and had heard about his successful cases. The lawyer replied that talented people always have envious people. But Raoul immediately explained that he had heard more than just flattering reviews, and some evil tongues said that the lawyer was known for strangely attaching only convenient evidence to cases. The lawyer said that he would stop talking, and the examination of the guards' bodies clearly showed that there are no traces of the Holy Maiden's magic on them, and this can be confirmed by the expert present. Raoul decided to look into the expert's past and used magic. The lawyer added that there is no point in suspecting the expert, because it is already clear to everyone that there is no physical evidence. Raoul replied that he had prepared evidence. The lawyer asked how the hero managed to do this. After all, the defense attorney himself knew that all the evidence was hidden by an expert for a decent amount. The lawyer thought that the court in this country is easy. It is only necessary to bribe experts and forge evidence, and his wealth only grows with each passing week. With a victory, the series of cases won becomes endless. The lawyer decided that this time the glorious hero Raoul was very unlucky with the enemy. Raoul asked the lawyer to remind him of the actual charge on which Saint Christina had been arrested. The lawyer replied that the Holy Virgin was accused of allegedly using her magic against Princess Victoria. Raoul said that if that was the case, he would have to ask the princess herself. The lawyer was outraged by Raoul's words and reminded that he had killed her himself and in a very spectacular way. So she can't be a witness because dead people don't give evidence. Raoul asked if he could imagine if Victoria were still alive. The lawyer asked warily what Raoul meant by that. The hero reminded that just the body of the princess was not examined for evidence. Raoul exclaimed with delight that he was glad to present Princess Victoria, the pearl of the Kerr's kingdom, to everyone's attention. Everyone except Saint Christina was horrified by the sight of the princess and made a noise of surprise. Raoul wished her luck with the examination of Victoria's body. The lawyer, panting with fear, wondered how she could still be alive in this state. Chapter 59. Raoul will offer to ask the princess herself, since he is here. He asked Victoria if Saint Christina had done anything to her, but the princess only let out a nasty wheeze in response. Raoul said that, unfortunately, he would not be able to take a statement from the princess, although he was still quite alive, and so it remains only to invite an expert to examine her body. The lawyer thought that it was enough to fabricate evidence here and now and the case would be won. He whispered to the expert to do everything as usual and not let him down. After some tinkering, the expert announced that the result of the examination of the princess's body showed the presence of traces of the Saint Christina's magic. The lawyer shouted what he was talking about and really didn't understand a damn thing about how to conduct an expert examination. The expert replied that he no longer wants to falsify evidence and will tell everything as it is. The judge reminded the lawyer that the expert's words were true and could not be challenged. The expert said that until now, he received money from a lawyer in exchange for falsifying evidence. And as a result of victories in court, the lawyer received even more lucrative cases, for which evidence was also forged. Thus, they did not earn bad money in their business. The expert stated that it is larger he can't do that, because he has a guilty conscience. The lawyer shouted that Rael was manipulating the expert with magic and that this could be easily proved. The defense lawyer demanded to immediately bring another expert to analyze the situation. The judge invited a female expert and she immediately began to conduct an expert examination of her colleague. The woman announced that as a result of the examination, no traces of magical interference were found. The lawyer yelled that this was complete nonsense. Rael said that it also seems to happen with a lawyer that convenient evidence does not appear. The lawyer began to demand bring in another expert. Rael knew that there was a significant flaw in the courts of this country. Once you win the expert over to your side, as the vile lawyer did, and victory is assured. Rael remembered how he had felt it firsthand when his trial was being held. He decided that he should now use dark magic and subdue all the experts in the capital. And then as much as you want will be able to hide and create evidence at their discretion. Every expert invited said that there were no traces of Rael's magic, and this caused almost insanity in the lawyer, who shouted that this was not the case. Maybe Rael was happy and thought that this shitty court is very suitable for this shitty country, and all this will be useful for his revenge. The expert said that once it is proved that no one is manipulating him, he wants to see the results of previous examinations. After examining the bodies of the guards, he stated that there were traces of Christina's holy magic on them. The lawyer accused the expert of treachery and reminded about the money spent on him. The judge immediately called him to order and promised that he would have the floor later. The judge said that the results of the examination of Princess Victoria conducted in the courtroom were accepted. They will be presented by the court as evidence and will be attached to the case. The lawyer began to ask Christina to start objecting, because if she was convicted, his career as an invincible defender would collapse and he would lose everything. The Holy Virgin promised to help, and the lawyer tried to explain what to say. But the holy magic confused his thoughts and he began to enjoy everything around him. People started asking him what the hell he was doing up there and why he was laughing so idiotically. The lawyer only exclaimed at the end that he was great and could remain invincible. People began to talk noisily about how he jumped out of the window right after the Holy Virgin. She whispered something to him. And all this is the influence of the holy magic of the witch, and now it is clear that the evidence is not false. Witnesses began to demand severe punishment for Christina. After all the evidence points to her guilt, and the lawyer, under the influence of her charms, committed suicide. So it's clear to everyone that she's a real witch. The audience in the hall supported the witnesses and began shouting accusations in the direction of Saint Christina. Each of them turned out to have something to remember the Holy Virgin. Christina asked if they could finally understand the beauty of saving her. After all, the lawyer was really happy when he knew salvation. The Holy Virgin said that if no one could understand it, they were all stupid sinners with lost souls. Therefore, he himself, at the cost of his life, will atone for everyone's sins. But only at the same time it would be nice to be in the arms of as many people as possible. People were outraged by her words and began to demand the judge's execution for Christina. The judge said that there is no point in further discussions and the court makes its verdict. The court recognizes Christina Alcott as a witch and sentences her to death by burning at the stake. Chapter 60. The crowd in the square cheered for the death of Saint Christina. People said they couldn't wait for her to scream in pain as she burned in the fire. Rael said that burning is a beautiful execution and he hopes that Christina will not pass out from the smoke until she is well fried. The Holy Virgin asked for forgiveness because she only wanted to grant salvation to every person. But now everyone can rest easy. She will atone for all their sins before God by her death. Christina wished everyone happiness because they are just a stupid, sinful and dishonest rabble. Residents of the capital shouted to her that she was carrying nonsense and wanted to burn in the flames of the fire as soon as possible. Christina felt the fire with pleasure and turned to God. She declared that she would finally be able to go to his realm and be with him. And finally, she will fulfill the mission assigned to her to save sinners. The Holy Virgin screamed that she was simply crazy about the flames of the fire, and asked to fry her harder so that her body would turn into a complete mess. She moaned and laughed with pleasure, shouting that she was insanely pleased. People were saddened by this sight, because each of them wanted to see the suffering of Saint Christina, and her joy only caused annoyance. Rael said that now the fun begins for Christina and she needs to properly repay for all her sins. He thought of a better way to make this hill look like a museum of revenge, and her former partner, Christina, will be a worthy exhibit. A sudden stab in the back made Rael say it was an unexpected surprise. Deodora exclaimed that she didn't expect it to be so easy. After all, Rael's body is now crippled by a powerful force of magic, and she didn't even expect it to be so much. Rael replied that they had not seen each other for a long time and asked if Deodora had not given up the idea of taking revenge on him. The demoness said that this was impossible, because ever since Rael broke into the palace and took everything from her, she sees her older sister in dreams every day, and her sister's suffering haunts her. Rael reminded her that her sister had died protecting all the demons, and it would have been better if Deodora had died there as well. The demoness roared in anger and promised to finish the hero off immediately. Rael offered to do it right now, and then said that she couldn't possibly do it on her own. After all, Deodora is just an ordinary child who, without his help, would not even be able to take revenge on Cameron Erringham. Deodora said that Rael, apparently not to kill in the usual way, and so she will do what Princess Victoria once did. The hero only replied that he was immediately flooded with vivid memories. Deodora explained that the dagger, like that arrow, is enhanced with light magic. But at the same time, it is unpleasant for her to hold it herself, because she is also endowed with dark power. Deodora said it was ironic, since she didn't take place as a demon, and the only spell I've been able to learn is creating a copy. Although because of her weak dark power, she can use this blade to kill Rael. The hero replied that he was glad to hear it and remembered how he had awakened the thirst for revenge in the young Deodora. Rael asked her why she didn't stick a dagger in his heart. After all, there was so much noise and pathos, and really her feelings for her older sister turned out to be an empty sound. Deodora screamed that Rael was a scoundrel, and when he came to kill her sister, he said that humans are good and demons are evil, and her sister was really just defending her country and her people, and all the demons wanted to live a normal life and nothing else. Deodora said that now the beasts would come and eat Rael, as they had done once before, and she will watch until Rael takes his last breath, and this will be the end of the former hero. 5 days later, Deodora wondered why she felt so empty, since she had finally managed to kill Rael and avenge her sister. Deodora thought that if she took revenge, she would be able to get rid of all her suffering. But why is it that he feels so much worse now than he did before? Chapter 61. Rael felt the white light and thought that this was probably the third time he had been in this place, and it looks like everything worked out as it should. And Deodora really can, whenever she wants, although she probably had no idea that Rael was using her to die. The goddess of love said that the time has finally come when she can see the hero Rael again. The hero replied that he was also very happy about his old friend. The goddess of love asked that Rael must have been in pain, since he didn't use the recovery spell when he died. Rael replied that he was also glad that she was still alive and well, but where was she going? Use your hand. The goddess of love explained that she presented it as a compensation when she revived Rael. After all, when you break the laws of the divine world, you need to give something in return. For example, your voice, hair, or body part. Rael chuckled that even in this world there are laws, and who made them up? The goddess of love replied that this was done by the gods themselves, both in the divine world and in the earthly one, and all this is decided by the gods in a divine assembly. Rael was surprised at the organization. The goddess said that she was incredibly happy to see her beloved Raoul and be with him. Rael said that she should have known by now why he'd come and asked her to grant him his wish again. The goddess of love exclaimed that only when Rael asks her for something does she understand the meaning of her existence. She asked what her beloved hero wanted. Rael decided to take advantage of the goddess, and as soon as she tried to object, he immediately reminded her of her recent promises. He ordered the goddess of love to shut up and do it. The goddess of love screamed that for the sake of her beloved, she would give up her eye to fulfill his wish. She called for the carriage that guides the dead to hell to come to her immediately. Rael thought about it, that now everything is ready, and although this goddess is not all right with her head, but she can be very useful. The goddess of love asked if Rael was leaving her so quickly. The hero promised that they would definitely see each other again, and her gouged out eye became a special highlight, and she is now much more beautiful than she was before. Rael thought he would see Christina, for the gate of judgment lay ahead. Of course, sometimes there are exceptions like Rael, but all the souls of the dead go to the gate of judgment in the beginning. Rael remembered hearing about it from the goddess of love when he first died. Rael decided that the gatekeepers didn't have much to worry about. It's easy, because the queue is huge. At this gate, the sins of each person are evaluated and where their souls will go is decided. There are only 3 options: hell, rebirth, and the land of the gods. All the merits and sins in life, character and other aspects are expressed in numbers, and then there is a distribution. Most of the dead are reborn, others go to hell, and only a few go to the land of the gods. It is also said that a soul that has passed through the gates of hell will never see the light of day again, and this is what the mad goddess feared. Rael decided that he needed to go there and ask the goddess of love send it. After all of his training was just for this purpose, and his current revenge should start in the underworld. Rael thought that he didn't care what happened after his revenge, even if he never sees the white light or anything worse. All this is not important, the main thing is to take revenge on Saint Christina. The dead in line began to ask what was going on and who the stranger in the carriage was. Rael apologized to Christina for being a little late. The Holy Virgin asked him how he came to be here and if Rael was dead, too. The hero explained that he died specifically for a date with Christina. The Holy Virgin said it must be love, since Rael had made such sacrifices for her. Rael invited Christina into the carriage and told her that he had written out the route of their date, and that it was not worth waiting in line. Christina asked where they would go in such a romantic carriage. Rael replied that it was a surprise and she had to be patient, and that the place they were going to would be perfect for her. Chapter 62. Rael told his companion that now they were in place and it was time to start their infernal tryst. Kristen chuckled. How could a date in hell be so romantic? After all, only absolute villains get there. The Holy Virgin remarked that there might be others in hell who would need to save her, but she had already done all her duty in the world of the living. The Holy Virgin explained that the Lord is waiting for her in the kingdom of God, and she must accept the love of the Most High. Rael replied that Christina had nothing to worry about and that this date would not take long, and he just wants to make sure they're real. Faith and salvation, about which the Holy Virgin spoke. Christina asked if Rael doubted her faith, since there was no need to be convinced of it, and her faith is very real as it has been proven many times. Christina said that she did not intend to go to hell, and their date should be postponed. Rael replied that he had fully expected such an answer and therefore wanted to offer a bet. The hero asked if the people whom Christina had given salvation through enjoyment were really saved and living happily in the kingdom of God. And if they really did ascend to heaven, then it's up to her and Christina. She can do whatever she wants with it. Rael said that if he won, then Christina should go to hell and save his friends, of whom there are many, with holy magic. The Holy Virgin agreed to such conditions and said that in this case she would go on a hellish date. Rael replied that then they should not linger and it was time to go. Christina laughed and told him that she needed to think of something interesting to do with Rael when she won the bet. Rael explained that she would have plenty of time to think. Rael said that now he will see what hell looks like. I was immediately surprised by the large variety executions that took place everywhere. The hero drew attention to the hill where they were being punished for lust and invited Christina to look there. Rael said that while there was still time, it was possible to go back in time a little. He recalled that before the appearance of the Holy Virgin, there were about 20 mercenaries in his squad. Christina replied that she remembered it well, but they quickly disappeared after her appearance. Rael remembered that when the counterforce was first formed, there were young mercenaries in addition to him and Vendale, and those events happened right after the order to march against the king was received. Demons. Rael went around towns and villages looking for people who would be willing to fight alongside him. And in one cheap eatery, he came across young guys who were pouring disgusting swill. Those guys did not expect to join such a great goal, and even with the legendary hero Raoul, because they considered themselves rednecks. Rael knew that the country always chose warriors from the higher strata of the population, but still, he decided to do otherwise and invited the guys to fight with him. The guys were surprised by this offer and asked why Raoul chose them. The hero replied that I heard how they wanted to be useful, and this influenced his choice. Rael decided then that he should help all those who wanted to act for the sake of this world and for the sake of saving people. The boys immediately agreed and promised to be loyal companions to Raoul in the campaign against the Demon King. After that, they all set off on their way to meet the adventures. Each of the young guys found their own purpose in life, and often they thanked Raoul, seeing in him their mentor. This was not until Saint Christina joined them 3 months later, and the same guys who always diligently performed their duty. In particular, at some point, they began to lose heart. One by one, they began to leave the squad without explaining anything. Raoul tried to find out the reason for such actions, but they began to avoid him, and later none of the 20 guys remained. Raoul asked Christina if she had also granted them her salvation. Christina explained that those guys despised their own origins and didn't even thank God for their birth. And so, after the sacred intercourse, she ordered them to go and apologize to the Lord. Raoul said that they had already arrived and that there were those in this place who were wallowing in lust. Raoul had said that Christina would never meet anyone she knew, and the Holy Virgin was surprised that sinners turn out to be food for a huge dog. Suddenly, Christina realized that she was seeing someone who shouldn't be here. Chapter 63. Saint Christina exclaimed that it was amazing, and it looked like those who ended up in hell didn't die. And they are certainly worthy of regret, since they sinned and did not receive salvation. Christina said that she was very sorry for these poor devils. Raoul agreed and reminded the Holy Virgin that she was the reason they were in this place. Christina asked how this could be, since she had given them holy salvation. Raoul told her to look closely at their faces, even though she wouldn't be able to recognize everyone she'd slept with. Raoul showed Christina how she performed her rescues. She reveled in debauchery and promised everyone the way to the Lord. Christina commanded to do more good deeds and covet her holy body. After all, only through her body could they go to the kingdom of heaven. All the victims were bewitched and asked for a speedy rescue, and Christina, enjoying herself, guided them on the right path. Raoul said it wasn't surprising, since she couldn't remember all the faces, because she was so wrapped up in her own satisfaction. Raoul suggested that she take a closer look at the local guys and understand who they are, because for sure she can recognize some of them. Christina said that Raoul acts dishonestly and shows she has false visions. And although it is clear that he wants to win the argument, but this should not be done. Raoul said that if Christina was sure that it was all a lie, it meant that she still had some memories. After all, how can she know that this record is fake? Saint Christina replied that she might be able to recognize someone, but still, in her orgies there was no place for lust, but only a path to the truth. And all those orgies with her, chosen by God himself, are salvation. Because everything is for the sake of pleasure, and in pleasure lies salvation. Christina exclaimed that the people she had saved were now on the verge of death. They can't be in heaven or hell. Raoul replied that Christina deliberately pretends that she doesn't recognize anyone, because all her saved ones are in front of her eyes, and it must be a lot more serious than he expected. Raoul explained that it didn't matter now whether she believed it or not, because she was probably already feeling some kind of anxiety in her heart. Saint Christina said that she did not understand what Raoul was talking about, and in any case, her faith and salvation were unshakable. Raoul chuckled and added that he hadn't counted on that alone to affect her faith and salvation. The hero suggested that we go to another place of execution and see what else is there in this place. Christina agreed and said that she was looking forward to new experiences. The companions visited the place of punishment for laziness, for gluttony, for anger, for jealousy, for pride, and finally found themselves in the right place. Raoul explained that they had come to a place of punishment for greed. Christina noticed that this place was incredibly hot because of the volcano. Raoul explained that those who end up here have to cross the burning bridge, and after being tortured, they fall into the river of blood, and this is the order of reckoning here. Raoul noticed the two men trying to cross the bridge and wondered what sins they had committed. Christina replied that one thing is clear, that they are real villains, and this is beyond doubt. Raoul asked why Christina was so worried and pale. The Holy Virgin, her voice trembling, replied that they simply could not be here and they were not real. Her face gradually became distorted, and she muttered that those two were imposters. Chapter 64. Raoul said how Christina could be so heartless and call those two imposters, because they were her own parents. The Holy Virgin began to justify herself and said that this was a mistake, since her parents were now in heaven, and they could not be here. Parents, falling into the river of blood, began to beg for help, and Christina could not contain her emotions. Raoul asked her if she was all right and showed her how her parents were back at the beginning of the journey, because you can't die in hell. Raoul suggested that Christina take a closer look at her parents, since it was the most convenient moment. Raoul told me that Christina was really she killed all those who interfered with her faith. The Holy Virgin was indignant and declared that she had granted salvation to all. Christina tried to tell her parents not to go to the bridge. She was asking why they were here, because it wasn't supposed to be like this. Rael replied that since she herself had given her parents salvation, it was all the result of that very salvation. The parents screamed in pain and asked how Christina had dared to deceive them so cruelly. The parents reminded their daughter that she had told them that for the happiness of the entire human race, it is necessary to get rid of all those who interfere with this. And then they can, too, find happiness, but instead end up in hell. Rael asked sarcastically if Christina had cheated on her father and mother, and did not intend to save them at all. The Holy Virgin said that they were not her parents, but only impostors. After all, her mom and dad would never say such terrible things. Rael said that Christina was being asked for help, and she should give them holy salvation. But she replied that there was no need and that the impostors were not worthy of salvation. Christina screamed that her real parents were now in heaven receiving a blessing from the goddess herself. Rael said that if she was like that, if you are sure of this, then he has something else to show you. Rael showed her the goddess of love and explained that in fact the goddess in whom Christina believed so much was just a masochist, ready to do anything for him and even break the laws of the gods. Rael said that as soon as he said that he wanted to go to hell, the goddess of love immediately gave her right eye in exchange for this carriage. Although there was no denying that the goddess was actually quite useful, Saint Christina screamed that this was a lie and that it couldn't be. After all, it was this goddess who entrusted her with a sacred mission to save people. Christina declared that she was a holy virgin and a follower of the Lord, and obeying his will, she saved many people with the help of holy magic. And the holy goddess of love can't be so ugly, and it's all an illusion. Chapter 65. Christina decided that the light of holy magic, dispelling the darkness, would fall on Rael. The hero laughed and asked if Christina really had problems and couldn't use holy magic. Christina asked him why. Because he had said that if she lost, she would have to save Rael's friends in hell. The hero replied that he didn't really know that you can't use holy magic in hell. And now, no wonder the goddess of love is so afraid of this place. Christina said it wasn't fair for him to wait for his opponent to make his move. But Rael had explained that he wasn't. I waited and checked in advance to see if she could play her trump card up her sleeve. Rael said that Christina's favorite goddess of love is really just a pathetic sight. And if Christina can't use holy magic anymore, then she's not God's chosen one anymore, and just an ordinary person, just like all the people she saved. Christina screamed that it couldn't be, and she became a virgin from birth. Rael reminded Christina that a witch trial had taken place over her, and only this cast doubt on her image of the Holy Virgin. Raoul said that it was he who planned that trial for the sole purpose of the goal is to drag Christina to hell. Christina growled in anger at the words. Rael reminded her of how she had been waiting for his revenge and yet had missed such a moment. Yes, and she also played along, all the time, repeating about some kind of rescue. Rael complained that it was very difficult for him to hold back his laughter all this time. Rael asked if there really was such a holy virgin. After all, she was only flaunting her charms and basking in lustful pleasures. And maybe she's actually just a sick girl who mistakenly thought she was a holy virgin just because she could use it. Holy magic. And she came up with the idea that with the help of her lustful body, she can send people straight to the kingdom of God, while saving them from their sins. Rael showed Christina all her earthly affairs and the very moment when she was executed. The Holy Virgin was able to look at herself from the side and relive the moment of burning at the stake. Her wild screams of pleasure hit her hard in the ears, and Christina was horrified at herself. Her confusion was cut short by the screams of all those she had supposedly saved with her holy magic. Many of the denizens of hell cursed her and promised never to forget the deception she had given them. They demanded to release them in hellfire, and reminded Christina of how she had promised everyone a happy life in heaven. Saint Christina was horrified and ordered them not to approach her. Rael gloatingly reminded her that this was not the way to treat those whom she herself had awarded with holy salvation, and so she should once again save them all with her holy and insatiable body. Chapter 66. A crowd of sinners rushed to Saint Christina with prayers for salvation. Their hands gripped the Virgin's body, and their voices begged to be saved once more. Christina herself felt that her holy faith was giving way, and she began to ask to be released. Parents reproached their own daughter for the fact that their happiness was so close, and she turned everything to dust. The lawyer also arrived in time to say that he was glad to meet them, because he had not managed to celebrate his invincibility. The lawyer reminded Christina that she had promised him the pleasure of intimacy, and he was ready for the joys. The voices of the sinners mingled and became one continuous noise, whereupon Saint Christina screamed that it was all a mistake and that she was only here because she had come with Rael. The Holy Virgin screamed that they were all complete scoundrels and demanded to be released immediately. But it has a completely different purpose and the Lord is waiting for it in heaven. Rael reminded Christina that her presence in hell was a matter of course, and that it had happened at the very moment when she had passed through the gates of hell. Christina replied that this should not be the case and it was not true. Rael explained that it couldn't be any other way, because she had killed a lot of people under the guise of holy salvation. Christina screamed. Rael jokingly reminded her that she was now among her admirers and should enjoy herself. Her voice became drowned out by the shouts of the crowd of sinners, and she only prayed that Rael would have mercy and save her. Rael thought about what he should do, and praised the goddess of love for a beautiful gift. The hero shouted to Christina that this is the chain of the goddess herself, and if you climb it, even the dead will be saved. Christina ran up the stairs, but the hands of the sinners prevented her from making a desperate dash. Each of them became the first to embrace their beloved savior as soon as possible. Christina screamed, so that everyone goes to hell and doesn't get in the way, because now they're saving her alone. She did her best to cling to the chain, cursing her fans, which made Rael very happy. The hero said that it is impossible to treat people like this, because the Holy Virgin is supposed to grant people holy salvation. Christina screamed that she didn't give a damn about the whole rescue. Rael asked her what it meant that she was admitting that she wasn't a virgin after all. Christina snarled back that she was admitting that she wasn't a holy savior either, and that she had always spat on God and everyone else. She screamed that she doesn't care what happens to others, just to save herself, so she asks for help. Rael thought that the sweetest moment of this episode of revenge had come, when the chain snapped loudly and Saint Christina flew down to her saved ones. Chapter 67. Rael said that in this way the Lord responded to her for renouncing the holy faith. Christina screamed that it couldn't be, and Rael enjoyed her fall. It occurred to him that this was the place for her to be with her fellow sinners. Saint Christina screamed that her body was burning and she was very hot. She asked if Rael really enjoyed making fun of her, and the hero replied that death was even very becoming to her, and she's probably already realized that she's not special at all. And if earlier she used holy magic to make puppets out of people, now she has become one of them. So this is a very fair moment of his revenge. Rael laughed and shouted one last time that he wished Christina a happy stay and would be happy to remember this moment. Christine ran frantically to the carriage and begged Rael to take her with him. But Rael just shouted that their hellish date was a success and he was very happy. The Virgin's desperate plea not to abandon her was cut short by a thud, followed by another loud squelching sound. Rael thought that this must be the reward. Once a person who is mired in sinful passions on earth drowns in hell in rivers of blood. Christina, before her next death, dreamed of her childhood, the very moment when she asked a stranger who she was. The goddess of love then replied that she was the one who entrusted Christina with a special mission, and Christina will have to become a holy virgin and give salvation to all people, bringing love everywhere. Little Christina replied that she understood everything and would spend the rest of her life doing it. General Brown greeted the audience from his commander's room. Princess Victoria reproached the general for digging for a long time and called him a stupid skeleton. The princess ordered her guest to be summoned immediately. General Brown announced that at the personal request of Her Highness Victoria, Princess of the Kur's Kingdom, the Holy Virgin Christina had been invited to join them. The guest corrected the general that she was no longer a holy virgin, but still very happy to see him with Princess Victoria. Christina said that now she has discovered the path of a preacher of beauty. General Brown thought it was odd a transformation, because her past is filled with dark pages. He asked what it meant to be a preacher of beauty. Christina explained that when Rael took revenge on her, she realized that her rescue methods were a mistake. Therefore, she decided to help girls in love from now on and make them more beautiful. General Brown asked if Rael had helped her get back on track. Christina said that she has an online salon and her business is going up. Princess Victoria exclaimed that no one cared about her business and ordered the general to get down to business faster. General Brown explained that the princess wanted to know something. The princess recalled how her trial took place and how she hung immobilized on the cross. Victoria said that if Rael had been killed in the same way, they must have looked pretty good from the outside. Christina said that Rael, like the princess, was eaten by stray dogs and pecked by crows, so there was no such pair anywhere else. Christina offered to help Victoria make things work out for her and Raoul. She gave the princess a dress and created an image of the crucifix while adding her magic. Victoria immediately flared up with desire and began to demand the general to please her. Christina thought that she had overdone the holy magic a little and invited them to meet again in the beauty room. Chapter 68. Raoul said that now he is in place and apparently the goddess of love was really right. The hero remembered her words that a soul that has passed through the gates of hell at least once will never be able to see the light of day again. And it didn't look like that gate was going to open for him. The goddess of love said that now she sees how Raoul has completed the execution of his next revenge. Raoul asked if the gods were free to go back and forth through this gate, because it wasn't fair. The goddess explained that everything is designed so that people cannot get out of hell, and these rules are set by the gods who rule hell, so no one can break them. Also, among the gods, the most cruel and ruthless are those who rule hell, and they also have an incredible contempt for people. These gods will never listen to man and will never meet him halfway. Raoul replied that all he had to do was make the gods listen to him and then he would get out. The goddess of love exclaimed that this is impossible, and unlike her, these gods do not have love and respect for people. The goddess of love reminded that only she can fulfill Raoul's wishes, and thanks to her feelings, he was able to fulfill his revenge. Raoul replied that he understood the whole situation perfectly, and that the gods of hell would not love him. Therefore, he will be the first person to rewrite these very rules and be able to get out of hell. The goddess of love asked if he really wanted to do something incredible. Raoul replied that he had no other choice and asked her to tell him how to kill these gods of hell. The goddess of love explained that this is complete madness and the gods who run hell are immortal. They are also incredibly strong and far stronger than any other gods he has ever met, and they also have countless fallen angels in their service. The goddess explained that if he went against them, he would end up in an even crueler hell than Christina. Raoul said that he was tired of all this chatter, so it was time for the goddess to give him all the information. Raoul said that he needed to return to the human world, because there were still objects of his revenge that should repay him. The heroes decided to eliminate any obstacle in their path, even if it was the gods of hell themselves. The goddess of love exclaimed that man could never take the life of a god. But then Raoul reminded her of her hand and eye, so there must be a way to kill the immortals, and if the goddess of love can't help him, then he doesn't need her anymore. The goddess exclaimed that it was unfair of him and reminded him of what she had done with her body for Raoul. The hero replied that the service that requires compensation is not love at all. And if she really loves him, then she must show her true love. Holding the heart of the goddess in his hands, Raoul realized that he was flooded with memories of the eternity that the goddess of love had lived. Raoul could see the gods laughing at his executions and deciding what to do with him. While the people in the square were stoning him to death, the gods were debating whether they would save him or not. After all, they had never interfered in such matters before. In the end, they only enjoyed his execution and continued their divine argument. Raoul thought that the Feast of the Gods was very interesting, but he needed other memories. After reviewing a lot of the goddess of love's memories, Raoul still happily exclaimed that he had found a way to kill the god. And now the path from hell home will have to be cleared from the immortal gods. Chapter 69. Raoul saw in the memories of the goddess of love an object called the scythe that kills the gods. He decided that now he could break the rules and get out of hell. It remains only to take this artifact, because it is in the treasury of heaven. The goddess said through her laughter that it was impossible to do such a thing, so that the divine would fall into the hands of a person. Raoul was surprised that the goddess of love was still alive, because her heart was in his hands. He asked if there was anything she could do to help him get the god-slaying scythe. The goddess asked why Raoul was doing this to her. Raoul grinned back and explained that he hated every single one of the gods for choosing him as their savior. After all, they used him as a pawn to save the world, and as a result, he died. But even then they did not help him, but only mocked at his executions. The goddess of love asked if Raoul even saw the gods as the object of his rampant revenge. Raoul replied that it was foolish of them to think that his revenge would not affect them. After all, for him now the whole world is divided into those who need to take revenge and all the others. Raoul reminded him of how the gods had used it as they wished, and then thrown it away. So he will do exactly the same, take advantage of the goddess of love, and then abandon her. Raoul said that the goddess of love is still special to him, because he believes that she showed him true love, and he can only ask for the most desirable things from her. He asked her to demonstrate her most exalted love and all her vulgar feelings. The goddess of love grew stronger from such words and began to say that she loved Raoul, and would do anything for him. Raoul decided that now was the time to go to the chief god of hell. He was disappointed that the carriage summoned by the goddess of love had disappeared without her support, and it was very convenient to travel on it. Arriving at the very center of hell, Raoul saw the fallen angels and decided that they were just in time and would serve as a good replacement. One of the angels stated that the sinner who entered hell will be punished and his dirty soul will be judged by the god who commands hell. Raoul thought that their huge and pitch-black wings looked quite impressive. He asked if they were really the fallen angels he had heard about. The fallen angel stated that Rael would be sent to the god of the Lord of Hell, and therefore he should be silent and not resist. Rael replied that this was exactly what he needed and asked him to be more careful in delivering him to his master. The fallen angel asked if Rael had decided to resist. Well, he explained that he had hit someone completely by accident and had no intention of killing anyone. The fallen angel said that if that was the case, Rael would have to be put to sleep. The hero was surprised that the fallen angels also have illusion magic. He recalled the words of the goddess of love that the gods of hell were much stronger than the warriors and mages he had encountered along the way. Rael decided that it was worth testing what the fallen angels were capable of and used his dark power. It seemed to him that these demons would be even more useful. He asked one of the angels that he was probably the most important one among all the others. Rael explained that he also had business with the local god, so it would only be good for him if they took him to the Lord of Hell, because everyone would benefit. The hero asked him to immediately take the Lords of Hell, but only in some other way, not so bold. The angels were outraged by Rael's insolence and declared that they only obey the god of Hell, and therefore he must surrender. Rael laughed and thought that he was immediately reminded of the fiery execution of Saint Christina. The fallen angels were surprised by the hero's strength and decided that he possessed the magic of darkness. And his magic is so powerful that Rael doesn't look like a human at all. The fallen angels did not want to approach Rael and began to think about what they should do. After all, if they submit to the hero, then the god of hell will be enraged and they will immediately be deprived of the position of servants. Fallen angels remembered how recently one of them brought the deceased and was only a few seconds late, and the Lord of Hell immediately killed him for it. Another fallen angel was killed for violating an order which turned out to be a mistake, and he was only following the instructions of the god of hell and finished off 100 dead people. Another fallen angel died just because he was flying loudly. Rael said that he didn't really understand what was going on, but he advised them to calm down first. The hero promised that if they lead him carefully, he will not resist. The fallen angels decided that they only needed to deliver the sinner, and replied that they agreed to Rael's terms. The hero said that now he feels much better and they are quite normal guys who listen to other people's requests. On the street, he said that now it was time for them to go to the main god of hell and find out what kind of trial was prepared for him. Chapter 70. Rael was surprised by the variety of executions in hell, and although they were all intended for sinners, they were made by God, which made it even more interesting. Rael thought how stupid people on earth were to think that all the gods were pure, honest, and the very embodiment of good. Although if you think about it, the people themselves, also created by the same gods. Rael said that the palace of the Lord of Hell is really amazing for its size. After looking around, the hero said that the god of hell apparently has no taste at all, since he considers such jewelry to be something cool. The fallen angel was indignant at the hero's words and asked how he dares to say so, since his life is precious to him. Rael explained that the whole area was covered with ivy and bones, so it was completely unclear how they could get inside. The fallen angel replied that he was using a staff that contained special magic. He stated that he had brought a sinner and demanded to boil the gate. Rael thought that this item was also interesting as a divine artifact, and Rael noticed that the inside was just as tasteless as the outside. The fallen angel ordered him to stop being impertinent, but Rael replied that he himself would like to live in a castle with a more elegant interior. The hero said that his museum will soon be packed to capacity, and it is possible that he will open the next one in this castle, but only after redoing everything first. The fallen angels began to fuss and tell each other that the god of hell is furious and they need to hurry. Rael joked that they should not have built such a long corridor, and then they would have got there faster. The fallen angel said that they had reached the god's chambers and ordered Rael to go ahead. Rael thought that this place is similar to the space around the gates of hell, and now it is clear that all this is the work of God, who commands hell. After seeing the main god, Raoul said that his invitation was a great honor for him and he was glad to appear before such a great god. The Lord of Hell asked if Raoul understood why he was invited to this place. He said he had no idea and was only doing what he had to do, so he didn't know why he was here. The Lord of Hell ordered to read the list of deeds of the sinner Raoul. The servant read out that, as a mere human, Raoul Evans had passed through the gates and entered the halls of hell without permission. The hero at this time thought that even the sculptures here are very strange and everything looks rather ridiculous. Raoul was further accused of commanding the dead and acting as if he were the ruler of hell, which is regarded as the greatest insult. Raoul interrupted the master's servant and said that it was time to get to the point. The huge dog growled at Raoul and asked him if he understood the situation he was in. Rael just laughed at the sight of the enraged dog and joked about its shaggy head. The Lord of Hell said that if Rael was tired of everything, then he would make a small show first, because passing a sentence quickly is very boring. The God of Hell stated that he had gathered all of Rael's favorite dead here, and invited him to amuse himself. Rael replied that he was very surprised that the Lord of Hell had gathered a bunch of weaklings for him. The hero asked if the God of Hell really wanted to humiliate him in this way. If that's the case, then the Lord of Hell really has no taste. Chapter 71. The God of Hell said that Rael could not understand the preference of the gods, and this is natural, because he is just a small midge. All 5 of the dead couldn't figure out where they were or why their bodies couldn't move. Rael thought that he had already got rid of all of them in his earthly life, so why should he see them again? The hero told General Brown that they had not seen each other for a long time and it was very strange to see him in the flesh. The general demanded that he finally be forgiven and put out of his misery, but Rael only laughed in response. The hero said that he was also happy to see Sandra and Professor Ren Bennick. Sandra only asked where Princess Victoria was now, because she was always waiting for her. Rael asked Lucas Eckhart who he was. Lucas replied that he was the one who protected Count da Costa, and the hero immediately remembered how he turned into this guy. Saint Christina screamed out what was going on here at all, and if this was Rael's doing again. Rael asked her to calm down, because he was already very tired of her face. He invited all 5 of them to voice their grievances to the God of Hell, since he was the one who had gathered them here for some purpose. Christina begged the Lord of Hell to save her and promised that she would do anything for it. Rael explained to the Lord of Hell that it was unlikely that his idea would be interesting, because he had already killed all 5 people on Earth, and this fight would lead to nothing else. Christina rushed to pray to the God of Hell to save her. She tried to seduce him and promised to serve faithfully. The God of Hell asked the Holy Virgin if she really wanted salvation, and if so, he would immediately release her. The others yelled that they also wanted help and release from eternal torment. Christina called the Lord of Hell her God and only managed to say that she would be faithful to him. The other sinners immediately fell silent when they saw what had happened to Saint Christina. The Lord of Hell said that all these people who are present here are those whom Rael wanted to condemn to eternal suffering. And now he has released Saint Christina from this suffering, and now she will not rise again. The Lord of God explained that he had shown mercy, although Saint Christina was unlikely to be able to thank him for his kindness now. Lucas Eckhart began to ask the Lord of Hell to release him too, because he was already tired of suffering. Lucas went on to explain how Rael had killed him in a nightmarish way, and how he had been in hell ever since, suffering beyond belief. Lucas Eckhart begged for mercy and wished he was dead for good. The Lord of Hell replied that he would accept this request and save Lucas. Rael reminded the Lord of Hell that these people were all his playthings and he didn't have to decide their fate. The hero suggested that the God of Hell first think about the consequences for himself before selecting his victims of revenge. The Lord of Hell replied that such a mage as Raoul could not do anything to him and he did not care whose toys these people were, because in hell only he ran everything. The God of Hell exclaimed that once something goes to hell, it becomes his property and what he does with it is nobody's business. Rael thought it was time to end the whole pretentious circus. The hero said that the God of Hell is a real talker who can't even keep track of his hands. Rael exclaimed that each of these people was his toy and he would not allow them to be released so easily. The hero decided that he must remove any obstacle in the way of his revenge, and even let it be the God of Hell himself. Chapter 72. Rael said that the God of Hell should not do anything that is not asked of him. Lady Kada replied that it was very interesting, since the little mage decided to go against his laws. He offered Rael a little more fun. The hero asked if he really needed to play with the dog. The Lord of Hell said that just playing with a dog will be very boring and therefore you need to add rules. The God of Hell explained that his toys would gradually turn to stone by the minute, until Rael defeated his opponent. Lucas Eckhart was delighted to be able to escape from eternal suffering. But General Brown, on the contrary, began to shout that he did not want to turn into dust. Rael said that this rule suits him and he is in business. The Lord of Hell ordered his servant not to kill Rael in any case, because he could not be allowed to die before the judgment was completed. The demon shouted that since Rael couldn't tell the difference between a dog and a wolf, he would show him the difference and do it right on his brainless head. Rael joked that the dog really has big paws. The demon immediately yelled that he wasn't a dog at all and Rael should shut up. One of the demon's heads told the other to hold its fire, or else the rest of us would have nothing left of this impudent guy. Rael continued to mock the fearsome demon and said that he smelled like a nasty dog and that his fur was flying everywhere. The demon wondered how Rael had managed to survive the blow. Rael decided that since the enemy could not be burned, it was worth trying to cool him down. The demon heads became confused and began to argue over which of them was more important and how to deal with Rael. Each of them did not want to give up the right to primacy, and this only pleased the hero. Rael asked who was controlling the body during their quarrel, because it was completely unclear from the outside who was in charge. Heads began to say that this Rael was not quite an ordinary person, because otherwise he would have lost consciousness long ago. One of the heads claimed to be in charge, while the other demanded to melt the ice floes stuck in their faces. And the third was to shut up and destroy Rael immediately, because the Lord of Hell was looking at them. One of the heads said she would take care of it and said that now Rael would understand who was in charge. Rael thought that this would be more fun, and it was a little different from the children's scarecrows that the head said. The hero advised the beast not to touch the sculptures of the Lord of Hell, because he will get angry, although they are very vile. One of the heads said that they would be punished for such a misdemeanor, but the other said that it was better to let it be so than they would lose to this person. The demon screamed out why Raoul wasn't talking anymore and demanded that the hero surrender immediately. Rael said that now he understood everything and dogs probably have a clear hierarchy and therefore the most important person controls the body. Heads began to argue over what to do with Rael. One of them was panicking and shouting that they should run. The other was offering to incinerate the hero. And the third was in favor of trying to freeze the enemy. Panic and confusion gripped the demon, and its heads recklessly accused each other of wrong actions. Each of them tried to take control of the body, while others interfered with this. Rael laughed and said that playing with the dog was very fun, but he didn't have time anymore and so it was time to finish. General Brown shouted that he could now feel his legs and move. Rael said that when he destroyed the fallen angels, he immediately thought that even as a human, he could kill anyone in this hell except for God. Rael asked me if I should have made Cerberus the torture watchdog instead of making such a cute little dog my right-hand man. Rael said that perhaps the Lord of Hell could only manage such a worthless servant. Chapter 73. Rael asked what other game the Lord of Hell had in store for him, since the watchdog adventure had come to an end. The God of Hell promised that the next game would be much more interesting and invited Rael to look into the magic ball. This ball-shaped artifact can only be used by God, who commands hell. It contains the power to determine how polluted the human soul is. The crystal ball reflects the color of the soul, and on its basis determines the place for subsequent execution. After that, the punishment that lies ahead is projected in the sinner's head. And until now, there was not a single person who could endure such horror. Rael was surprised when he suddenly saw his mother. He asked what she was doing here. Then the crunch of bones cut off his voice, and he heard a plea for help from his dying mother. A new stage of projection brought him to the same place, but only now he was looking at the young men he had once saved. Rael realized that if he succumbed to the horror of his soul and body, he would become a dead man and would no longer be able to use his dark magic. All he could do was watch helplessly as the people close to him died, and that was the next torture from the Lord of Hell. The voice of God asked if Rael liked this game and promised that it would last forever. Therefore, Raoul will have to be in an endless hell. The repeated death of his loved ones will transfer him to complete despair. This is his reckoning for his sins and his punishment for killing others. General Brown was surprised by the impotence of the once great hero Raoul, and the Lord of Hell laughed and explained that Raoul was in despair at the impending punishment, and that he was just a pathetic parody of God. And in the face of unbearable horror, this small mage can only fall into impotence and roll on the ground. Although at first it seemed that there was a rod in Raoul, but in fact it is fragile like glass. General Brown and the rest of the sinners were horrified by this situation and decided that they would also come to an end. The Lord of Hell said that this is Raoul's defilement and his future punishment, so the trial will begin soon. Suddenly Raoul laughed in the face of God and said that he must have really played like this, since Vladika believed in his suffering so much. The hero noticed that the Lord of Hell knew him well and allowed him to see many familiar faces. And if he was thinking of breaking it that way, then it's a stupid idea and completely ineffective. Raoul stated that he did not expect the God of Hell to be so naive, and would not be able, even a little, to strain his several convolutions. The Lord of Hell growled that the future punishment was going to be reflected in Raoul's mind, and didn't he feel all this horror? Raoul replied that God rules hell only through the fear of others and therefore does not understand how it can actually be ignored. The hero praised the Lord of Hell for a beautiful artifact and said that he would also like to have such a ball. After all, it is very difficult to determine each time whether a villain is in front of him or a good-natured person, and it takes a lot of time and effort. The master roared in anger and invited Raoul to play again. He promised that this entertainment will be the last in the life of the hero. Rael wondered what else this stupid ruler of hell could surprise him with. Chapter 74. The enraged god of hell turned into a giant and declared that the rules were simple and he would release all the remaining dead. And if Raoul can protect them, then he will win, and he will get a crystal ball. But if he can't, then he will lose and experience the wrath of the Lord of Hell. Raoul replied that it sounded good and that he was ready to play cat and mouse with God. Vladika advised Raoul to enjoy his last game properly, because when it was over, he would join the dead and experience millennia of punishment. Dr. Bennick and General Brown asked Raoul to try and win, as they absolutely do not want to be destroyed by the Lord of Hell. The god of hell announced that the game was starting and shouted to Raoul that he could try to escape. Lucas Eckhart asked the hero what the hell he was doing and why he left the others. Raoul explained that there was nothing wrong with them and they were just thrown a little further away. General Brown yelled that the Lord of Hell had shown him a bad thing, so he needed to answer him in full. Raoul explained to Lucas Eckhart that he had never been tamed, which was why he had to be put on a leash. The hero decided that it was time to take advantage of the fallen angels and asked the god of hell, really turning into a giant, ended his tricks. Raoul shouted to the Lord of Hell that he hadn't found anyone yet and had to run faster to catch up, because it would be shameful to lose to an ordinary person. The Lord of Hell screamed, Raoul should not be arrogant and should remember that this hell was created by him, so he knows every corner here. The god of hell exclaimed that he had found the first victim and I turned out to be Mad Sandra, who was wandering around in search of her princess. Vladika said that crushing her would be immediately uninteresting and decided to play a little with the victim. Princess Victoria's illusion told Mad Sandra that now she didn't need to look for her anymore, because she had already wanted to meet them for too long. Sandra exclaimed that she was very happy to see Victoria, and had been waiting for her princess all this time. The princess praised her faithful service and asked if she was alone all this time wandering around here. Princess Victoria asked to come closer to her and promised to hug Sandra as a sign of gratitude. The Lord of Hell, laughing at the victim, said that after all, these little people are very stupid and simple creatures. Lucas Eckhart tells the hero that the Lord of Hell has already found someone and apparently it is the Mad Sandra, who is unable to escape. Raoul said she was alright, but that god was stupid enough to call the dead people he knew so well. Sandra shouted that she was going to her princess and rushed forward. But suddenly, from behind, Princess Victoria's voice asked what the hell she was doing. Sandra's frantic mind was confused, and she was trying to figure out how there could be two princesses at the same time. Created by Raoul, the princess said that Sandra fell for the doppelganger and for this she should be punished. Another Princess Victoria began to assure that she was the real one, and that it was necessary to go to her arms as soon as possible. Sandra's crazy mind was caught between a difficult choice: go to the princess who promises punishment or go to the one who beckons with a hug. After a moment's hesitation, Mad Sandra grunted in response to the evil princess and rushed over to punish her. The evil Princess Victoria immediately ordered her loyal Sandra to cut the fake with a sword and then return to her back for the sake of punishment. Created by the god of hell, the illusion of Princess Victoria began to convince that she was the real one. But Mad Sandra replied that Princess Victoria had always treated her with all severity, and no hugs would deceive her. Chapter 75. Princess Victoria ordered Sandra to follow her, and Raoul said that now at least she would start moving. Lucas Eckhart reminded Raoul that he himself had not moved for a long time and therefore left the others to their fate. Raoul replied that it took time to prepare revenge, and even the preparation of Lucas Eckhart had to be thoroughly studied first, and then only act. Therefore, you should not be indignant, but you should calmly wait for your turn. The Lord of Hell advised Raoul not to get too cocky about this little trick, because it was only a temporary success. The fallen angel began to ask the master to stop and try to explain something, but the god of hell did not listen, and only waved his hand. Lucas Eckhart shouted that the god of hell had found someone else because he had gone the other way. The terrified General Brown wandered around and constantly asked why he was left alone and what kind of place this was. Suddenly, he came across a letter in which Raoul ordered him to run as fast as he could and explained that he had a special plan. General Brown yelled that he was tired of these jokes and where was he supposed to run. He shouted into the void, urging Raoul to save him immediately since he had a plan. After calming down a little, General Brown realized that whatever it was, he needed to find shelter. The Lord of Hell said that General Brown is experiencing an incredibly strong fear right now, and this is great, but still not the limit. General Brown stopped dead in his tracks and asked what his family was doing here. His wife and children began to ask for his help, but the general was frozen with fear and could not even move. The Lord of Hell said that he had heard about General Brown's great love of meat, so he prepared a favorite dish for him. And if he does not like his wife very much, then the meat of the children will seem much softer and more pleasant to the taste. The children screamed for their father's help, but General Brown could not overcome his fear. The God of Hell asked if he was happy to eat fresh meat after all this time. And do not be shy about your appetite, because there is still someone to cook. General Brown could only mutter in horror that he couldn't bear to look at it any longer and couldn't do anything about it. He screamed that he was terribly afraid, but the Lord of Hell insisted that he look at all the suffering of his loved ones. The God of Hell shouted that he was General Brown's pathetic grimace and that he should try harder to feel the full horror and fear of what was happening as much as possible. General Brown yelled that he couldn't stand this fear any longer and begged the Lord of Hell to finish him off immediately. The God of Hell replied that he simply admired the horror and fear on General Brown's face. And this is what all people are, because they are weak as midges. After all, pitiful humans are created for only one purpose, to be crushed. The Lord of Hell decided that leaving such a weak creature among the dead like General Brown would be a big mistake. Dr. Renbenik screamed that if she wasn't such a genius, she would never have made it in time. And that's why she hates brainless jocks. She told him that she had brought what Rael wanted. The hero happily replied that the doctor appeared at the right moment. Chapter 76. Dr. Renbenik shouted to General Braun that he must catch the object that Rael had prepared for him. She explained that it was an amplifying stimulant and that the general needed to drink it so that he could escape from God. General Brown wondered if this was the whole plan against God. The Lord of Hell said that a couple of bugs more, a couple of bugs less, still they are all useless. Lucas Eckhart called Rael a bastard for doing something to Dr. Rennet. Otherwise she wouldn't have been able to create a cure while in hell. Rael replied that it was just like that and the doctor had done everything according to his instructions. Renbenik ordered General Braun to drink the drug immediately if he didn't want to disappear forever too. She threatened that if he didn't drink the medicine, she would personally force him to do so. Therefore, he needs to stop whining and quickly drink the bottle. General Brown immediately screamed out in pain and began to transform. Lucas Eckhart said that the general failed them, too, and only became a skeleton. But Renbenik said everything worked out perfectly. The God of Hell laughed in surprise and stated that he didn't expect the general to turn even more undead. But if that's what happened, then General Brown should give you another look of horror. Instead, General Brown roared in anger and charged. Surprised, the Lord of Hell only managed to say that this was happening at all. General Brown turned into a fearless creature and continued to make wild sounds while advancing on the enemy. Lucas Eckhart shouted how it was possible for the God of Hell to retreat, and what a terrible thing Rael had done to the general. Rael explained that General Brown's condition was very sad and that the doctor's drug had turned him into a berserker. The Lord of Hell said how this pitiful person dared to hit him. After all, this is an unforgivable offense. Dr. Renbenik ordered the fallen angels to hold off the sides of hell as long as possible. The Lord of Hell roared with rage and said that up to this point, he was just playing around innocently. But now the pathetic bugs will know their place. Renbenik informed them that General Brown needed to be taken away immediately, as the effects of the stimulant would soon wear off. At least according to her calculations, it will happen very soon. The God of Hell shouted in anger that all humans were worthless and annoying creatures, so he would personally exterminate them all. Vladika demanded that the sinner Rael Evans appear before him, because all the games are over and now all hell will come out against him. God shouted that he would summon all the powers of hell to bring suffering to the insolent insect who dared to insult the ruler of hell. Lucas Eckhart suggested that the god's mana is of a terrible level, and he is clearly up to something. So Raoul should pull himself together and start doing something. Raoul, amused, replied that this was exactly what he had been doing lately, so there was no need to worry, although it was expected that it would be possible to hold out for a long time. But the Hell God's patience was not enough. The hero promised Lucas Eckhart that everything would be fine, because he had already prepared a worthy surprise for the Lord of Hell. Chapter 77. The epic confrontation between the hero Raoul and the Lord of Hell, who wanted to clear his possessions, has entered a decisive phase. The Lord of Hell shouted that they would all regret their actions, because they were vile godless people, and no matter what they try to do, they are just insignificant beings who are doomed to suffer and die. And everyone should understand and accept that once in this place, all their lives were in the hands of the Lord of Hell. Lucas Eckhart warned Raoul that God was going to attack. Raoul's reply was that he needed to concentrate. The Lord of Hell screamed that now he was going to rebuild hell and wipe out all those who were not pleasing to him and destroy all the souls under his control. Raoul thought that the stupid god was completely mad, but still, he should be allowed to show himself for now. although it will be fun when he finds out about his powerlessness and how surprised his eyes will be. The Lord of Hell told me what was going on and why everything had come back. Raoul asked why the God of Hell was so surprised, and if he was upset that things didn't go exactly according to his rules. The Lord of Hell asked why all hell was still here in one piece. Lucas Eckhart asked what was going on, because he couldn't understand anything. Raoul explained that the Lord of Hell wanted to destroy all his possessions, but he prevented him, so he set up a special barrier for all of hell. Lucas Eckhart asked how this was even possible and how much effort it took. Raoul replied that he had spent a lot of time preparing it, and that it had also taken a lot of effort to create the spell. Lucas Eckhart asked if Raoul had originally known how this was going to go and planned it. Raoul explained that, judging by the behavior of the God of Hell, it was clear that he was very irritable, and so he did everything he could to piss him off as much as possible. Raoul asked the Lord of Hell to answer whether it was really only wayward creatures who forced the game to start again when they didn't get their way. The God of Hell, surprised, answered what the sinful hero meant, but Raoul only exclaimed that the game was still going on. And now it will be interesting to see if the Lord of Hell can find him in the countless crowd of the dead. The God of Hell exclaimed that Raoul apparently decided to laugh at him. The master asked what magic Raoul had used against him, and if it was the goddess of love's tricks again. The Lord of Hell promised that all these tricks will not help the arrogant hero and he will kick his ass and make him suffer. After all the gods are eternal and invulnerable, and time for the destruction of pathetic people is nothing for eternal life. The God of Hell promised that as soon as Raoul was exhausted, it would all be over and then it would be fun to see how pathetically the hero would fall to his knees. Lucas Eckhart said that the God of Hell easily crushes fallen angels, but Dr. Ren Bennick explained that he was probably just fighting Raoul's illusory magic. The God of Hell really destroyed enemies, did not even notice that there are more and more new ones. Ren Bennick said that, judging by Raoul's efforts, he is massively creating clones. Sandra was lamenting that God was on edge and trying to find her beloved Princess Victoria. Ren Bennick suggested that this fight is likely to last a very long time and they can only watch. At this time, the goddess of love hurried as fast as she could to the treasury of the gods. She decided that she needed to hurry up and take the artifact to Rudel before the God of Hell killed him. After all, this magic scythe can kill even the gods. The goddess of love laughed and rejoiced that she could please her beloved hero. All she said was that she was on her way, and that she would do what Raoul wanted, no matter what it took. And all her efforts are only for the sake of true love. 3 days later, the battle continued. Raoul asked the god to remind him of what he had said about the eternal gods and the insignificance of other beings. Raoul said that the Lord of Hell looked very tired and was not as terrifying as he used to be. The God of Hell replied that there was something wrong with Raoul, because how can a fight with someone last 3 days and 3 nights? Raoul said that he himself was wondering how the great Lord of Hell, a god, could get tired in just 3 days. Raoul said he had hoped for more fun, but the Lord of Hell disappointed him. The hero explained that theoretically the body can fight forever without pain and fatigue. But whether the psyche can withstand such monotonous and exhausting work is another question. Raoul assumed that the Lord of Hell himself was hoping to have some fun, deciding that the man was not his opponent. But after a full day of fighting, it was likely that the Lord of Hell was panicking. Raoul was pleased to say that at that moment, the expression on the Lord of Hell's face was unforgettable. Raoul asked if the God of Hell was kneeling in front of a pathetic bug and asked if the master was ready to continue. The hero said that now it will not be an easy ride and in the final the God of Hell will have to accept his fate. Lucas Eckhart asked if it was really over. Ren Bennick replied that nothing was clear yet, and added that the Lord of Hell was still frozen. The God of Hell asked what if this fight was over, but Raoul asked me to speak normally and just admit defeat. Raoul explained that if the God of Hell was honest enough to admit defeat, then he was willing to compromise. The God of Hell wondered what kind of deal this brazen hero would offer him. Chapter 78. Raoul said that since he won this battle, he was ready to receive the promised crystal ball from the hands of the Lord of Hell. Raoul explained that there is one more condition and he will use this ball to throw sinners into hell in a month to restore the norm and free the earth. And the Lord of Hell for this month should give Raoul the right to use this ball at his discretion. After all, one devil, except for God, no one can cope with it. The hero reminded that these conditions will have to be accepted, because in fact the God of Hell has no choice in this situation. The master said that Raoul couldn't kill him with a knife alone. The hero replied that he knew this very well, but even if the master did not die, he would feel hell's pain in any case. Raoul declared that he had a great desire to carve this vile eye on the face of the Lord of Hell. God immediately declared that he agreed to the terms and would give Raoul power over the ball. The god of hell explained that in order for him to transfer his power to someone, it was necessary to sign a contract. And for this purpose, he has a document that is usually used between the gods to exchange gifts. Raoul replied that he understood everything, and although the contract does not have a condition for people, but in any case, he does not see a problem. After all, no one has ever asked the gods to share their power with him, and so he will be the first of men. Raoul said that there was no time to waste and that the paper should be signed as soon as possible. The god of hell called Raoul a scoundrel, and the hero reminded that he still wants to cut out the vile eye. The god of hell reminded that this contract cannot be terminated in the course of work until both parties meet again. The hero replied that he understood everything, but there was a clause 12 in the contract, in which there are exceptions in the event of the death of one of the signatories of the document. In this case, the contract is considered terminated and all powers are transferred to the survivor. Raoul said that if that was the case, then he didn't need the Lord of Hell anymore. Vladika replied that Raoul allowed himself to do so. The hero explained that he wanted to postpone the showdown with the gods until he could take revenge on people, because the sweetest things are supposed to be left for last. But it turned out that everything happened earlier, and therefore, as a warning measure, the god of hell must receive his portion of revenge. Raoul asked Vladika not to pretend that he had forgotten everything. The hero showed a long-standing council of the 12 gods, which was attended, of course, by the god of hell. The 12 gods discussed the fate of Raoul, who was sent to the human world as a hero savior, and later sentenced to death. The gods were deciding whether to step in and save Raoul. Each of the gods, be it the god of war or the god of fertility, and all the others, disdained the fate of the hero of the savior. In the course of a brief discussion, they decided that Raoul was just a pathetic bug who was not worthy of their attention, and if they decided to execute him, then he deserves it. One of the most ardent supporters of non-intervention was, of course, the god of hell, and this is the moment Raoul showed him. Raoul thanked the god of hell for that unforgettable review of his fate. Raoul recalled that it was at the whim of the gods that he was elevated to the frame of a hero, and thrown into the world of the living with an unbearable burden. And after all his efforts, he was simply treacherously executed. And the gods themselves only laughed at the fate of the hero and did not help in any way. Raoul said that the god of hell is actually near the bottom of his revenge list and will only serve as a warm-up. After all, the best part is yet to come. Vladika replied that he couldn't believe that some bug decided to take revenge on the gods, because it was ridiculous. But Raoul reminded how Vladika could not defeat him and asked him not to worry too much. Raoul asked that Vladika was probably feeling confused and needed to know what real fear was. The god of hell replied that this was impossible and that he could not be afraid of anyone, much less any person. The Lord of Hell reminded that not one person is not able to destroy God. The goddess of love exclaimed that she had already brought the artifact. Raoul said that it was very timely and thanked him for his efforts. The hero noticed that the artifact was much lighter than he expected, and the Lord of Hell was indignant at how a person can hold a scythe, which is subject to the fate of the gods. Raoul asked if he hadn't already guessed what lay ahead. Chapter 79. The god of hell exclaimed that this artifact could only be touched by gods, and it is impossible for a person to take it in his hands, and even fight 3 times in a row against God. Vladika exclaimed that he would not allow himself to be deceived and that this braid was probably a fake. Raoul replied that the scythe was brought to him by the goddess of love, so it's definitely not fake. Raoul thought that he should think of something interesting. He ordered the god of hell to resurrect the Holy Virgin and then kill her again. The god of hell replied that he should not go along with pitiful people and reminded that Christina could no longer be revived. Raoul asked Vladika to stop showing off and not forget how he lost the fight to an ordinary person. And now he is in a desperate situation and must obey, and obediently follow orders. The god of hell roared angrily in response and returned the Holy Virgin. The god of hell said that since he had fulfilled Raoul's request, he should be released alive. Raoul asked not to be impudent to the god of hell and said that next there will be a fascinating performance, in which he will have an important role. The fallen angels began to ask each other what was going on and where the noise was coming from. Raoul explained to the god of hell that he had gathered all his minions and now they must find out what was going on here. Raoul ordered the Lord of Hell to get down on all fours like an animal. The god of hell thought that he was beaten by a midge and now he is completely disgraced. Raoul reminded that it is time for Vladika to stop thinking of himself as a god, because even his kind is already flying away. The fallen angels began to discuss how pathetic their lord looked now, because he had lost the battle to an ordinary person. Raoul asked how the god of hell felt about being made a public joke. The hero reminded Vladika how he looked down on everyone and thought that he knew everything in the world. but now I knew what a real nightmare was, which I always used to frighten others with. The hero scoffed at the fact that the omnipotent gods were not so omnipotent, but could well experience human fear. Rael exclaimed that he had brought them all together for one reason, to take part in the bet. And the last fight will take place from minute to minute, so the question remains who will be the winner. Those who deserve to win are worthy of applause, and those who win the argument will continue to work in hell on good terms. Therefore, you should consider your choice and decide on your candidate. Rael asked who thought he would win. God immediately ordered no one to react. Rael asked who was on the side of the Lord of Hell now. Rael asked with annoyance that no one was really willing to bet on Vladika, because nothing would work out that way, and the argument was useless. Rael reminded that Vladika will now earn forgiveness by his death, just as he once did at his execution. The master hissed that Rael was nothing and couldn't kill a god. Rael said that as for God, Vladika is very much afraid of people. The god of hell immediately gave up and begged for mercy. He promised to do anything to stay alive. But Rael, tired of listening, waved his scythe. The hero said that the mage deserved forgiveness by death and he kept his word. The goddess of love exclaimed that Rael had finally killed this evil god. The hero replied that it was all because of true love, and on this note, his preparation for revenge ended. Chapter 80. The goddess of love asked what Rael meant by preparing for revenge, since he had just committed it. The hero replied that the death of the Lord of Hell was only the beginning and he only tried out the scythe. Rael told the goddess of love that she was his target for revenge. The goddess of love said, how is this possible? Because she went against the rules many times for him. And Rael himself always said that he relied only on her true love. Christina exclaimed that she had done her duty as a holy virgin after being chosen by the goddess of love, so why did she go to hell then? The goddess of love reminded Rael of the wounds she had suffered for him. Rael ordered the goddess of love to answer Christina's question. The goddess of love asked why Rael still lacked her true love, but the hero explained that anyone who can be manipulated, would be suitable for this role. If such a person ceases to be useful, then they simply get rid of him, which is exactly the principle that Christina went to hell. Christina asked if it was really true and she was just deceived. Rael explained that not only Christina was deceived, but also Princess Victoria and many other girls who were caught up in the passion. The goddess of love said that since Rael sensed her aura, then unfortunately, they see each other for the last time and soon her body will completely disappear. After all, her ability to regenerate didn't have any effect and now she has nothing to hope for anymore, since even God has turned his back on her. Rael asked the goddess of love to stop talking nonsense, because God probably doesn't care what happens to her. Rael said that in fact all the gods are the same. They are arrogant and greedy while they pretend not to understand what. Rael said that this was the last chance for the goddess of love to admit all her sins, although it wouldn't be enough to give her forgiveness anyway. The goddess of love said that she was very sorry that she did not save Rael during the execution. Rael said that wasn't what he meant at all, and explained that he was aware of all her sins. The hero reminded the goddess of love how she appeared in Christina's dreams and imposed a perverted understanding of love. And then, at her suggestion, Christina went to powder the brain of Princess Victoria. Therefore, it is the goddess of love who is to blame for all the crimes that these girls have committed. Rael said he knew all the details. The goddess of love said that she loved Rael and did everything for his good. But the hero asked why she herself did not tell about everything, but pretended to be just a fool. The goddess of love explained that she was ashamed when Raoul himself suffered because of her actions. The hero reminded that the goddess herself was not against his execution. The goddess exclaimed that it was impossible to doubt her love, because she really did everything for Rael, and did not mean any harm at all. Rael said that her words did not fit in at all with those events and that the goddess was just messing with people's brains for fun, not thinking about the consequences. The goddess of love said that she did not fool anyone, but only instructed sinners on the right path. Rael asked her to explain Princess Victoria's behavior when she tortured, raped and tortured him in the castle dungeon. Chapter 81. Rael felt some kind of magic working on him as his cock moved on its own, and Princess Victoria cast a spell to take advantage of the hero's powerlessness. Rael asked Princess Victoria to stop using it. The hero shouted that no matter what she wanted and did with him, he still would not give in to her will. But Victoria continued to laugh and enjoy the intimacy with the desired hero. Rael tried to resist Victoria's magic, but it was too much for him and the excitement was still there. Princess Victoria humored Rael in every possible way. She asked if Rael liked her body and the softness of her lips. Princess Victoria called the hero her favorite and admired his strength. She was glad when Rael's voice sounded like a girl's during ecstasy. The princess cast the spell over and over again and caused Rael's body to experience a new excitement. The hero did not understand what was happening to him and constantly tried to persuade Princess Victoria to stop. His body burned unrestrainedly and brought all new pleasure to the lustful princess. Victoria could not stop and continued to rape the hero in a variety of poses. Her screams and gasps carried far beyond the cell, but she wasn't worried about anything, as her lust clouded her mind. She continued to give herself pleasure, ignoring the hero's requests to stop. Princess Victoria screamed that Rael's cock was just huge inside her, and she loved her hero. Meanwhile, Rael was crying in despair and begging the princess to get off of him. Victoria demanded that Rael accept and enjoy himself. She wanted to make both of them have fun, and she was willing to spend hours hanging out with a guy. Victoria said that Rael belongs only to her and she will never let him go. For hours on end, she did not stop raping Rael in the hope of getting the hero to reciprocate, but she never succeeded. The princess coaxed and threatened the hero, and then again raped his exhausted body. Rael lost track of time then, but the only thing he understood was that it was being used. Rael felt pain all over his body and knew that Princess Victoria had dishonored him as soon as she could. Chapter 82. Princess Victoria said that she would like to stay with Raoul forever, but she has to go on business. Before leaving, she muttered that it was too early and wrapped Raoul in magic. Raoul explained to the goddess of love that it was at that moment that he realized that it was not Princess Victoria who raped him, but she in the guise of a princess. After all, the spell that was cast on him clearly smelled of the goddess of love. The mad goddess exclaimed that this was the only and last time she would control anyone. The hero replied that it was possible, but the goddess of love always took advantage of weak spots in the hearts of people. The goddess of love gave the idea, and Christina and Princess Victoria were already acting of their own free will and desire. They were able to stop, but they continued and went further, for which they deservedly paid the price. The goddess of love asked why Rael was doing this to her, because she loved him and wished him well. Rael replied that all this was not love, but only lust and the satisfaction of his own selfish desires, and the goddess only used it for her own purposes. The goddess asked what Rael meant and did not try to please her in her desires. The hero explained that he also used her as she used him before. The goddess of love exclaimed that all this is evidence of their one and only love. Therefore, together they are destined to build a paradise for their love, a place where it's just the two of them and no one can stop them. Rael said that all the gods are arrogant and all this is just a deception, so there was no one and only love. And Bogi knows this very well, but still continues to try to play, although she has had a lot of other men to whom she said the same thing. Raoul said that she was constantly looking for new beauties and deceived them, so what kind of only love can this be? The goddess of love persuaded each of the guys to create a paradise for the two of them and swore eternal love. But over time, she abandoned all those who were no longer able to fulfill her wishes, although she left those who coped with her requests just because they were boring. Rael asked her how she dared to talk about her one and only love for him after this. The goddess of love screamed that it doesn't matter what happened in the past, because now for her the only love is this. Rael. The hero joked in response that the goddess apparently jumps on everyone who has a nicer face, and in fact she is an ordinary whore. She exclaimed that she couldn't be a whore because she was a deity. Rael said that the goddess of love's wish all along was very simple. The hero reminded that he always gives what he deserves to everyone who needs it. Rael said that since everyone had already seen the goddess of love play with his body against his will, then there would definitely be someone who would do the same to her. After all, the time has come for the revenge of the goddess of love. Chapter 83. Rael informed the goddess of love that she would now be accompanied by this beautiful orc. The huge orc roared in delight and asked who the beauty in front of him was. Rael replied that now he could have fun with the goddess of love in peace. The orc said that he did not expect such a gift at all and was very happy to have the opportunity to fuck the goddess beauty. The goddess of love screamed that she would never allow it, because such a freak should not touch her beautiful body. She demanded that the hideous orc be removed from her sight immediately, and added that she had never seen such a vile monster. The orc only tried to protest that it hurt him to hear such a thing to himself. But the goddess of love did not calm down. She asked Rael to remove the monster from her, because its vile smell would make her nose fall off. And she even wants to go blind so that she can't see his terrible face. Rael laughed and remarked that he hadn't even realized that the goddess of love could make such a deafening cry. Rael explained that he had brought this orc specifically for the goddess of love, because it has all the qualities that she hates so much and it represents a complete abomination. The goddess of love no longer heard the hero's words. She only shouted at the orc that was inexorably approaching her. Rael happily announced that they were going to have a good time alone and moved them to the exact same cell he was in. The orc yelled that sex in prison was fine and he was already incredibly aroused. The goddess of love began to beg Rael for mercy and explained that she could not stand such torture. But the hero replied that he was only giving her what she deserved and she should understand this perfectly well. Now that he no longer needed her, Rael wished the goddess a pleasant time with the orc. The goddess of love was frantically hysterical and begged not to be left alone with such a monster. The orc said that now he is ready and no one will interfere with them anymore, and the goddess will get a lot of emotions from the first time with the orc. The goddess screamed at the orc not to come near because it was so disgusting that she would immediately throw up. The goddess threatened the orc with divine punishment for such a crime. But the monster didn't care. He just said that it was also his first time with the goddess and he was happy with the pink nipples. The orc noticed that the goddess's body was much more honest than she was and decided to pay attention to her ample breasts. The goddess was horrified to realize that she was enjoying being close to an orc, and she couldn't believe it. She asked him what he was doing to her and begged him to stop. The orc explained that Rael had specially filled this space with magic that increases sensitivity. And it must be very insulting for the goddess of love to experience such vivid sensations from an orc, and not from another handsome man. The orc screamed that he was incredibly lucky and now he would gladly help the beautiful goddess. The prisoner screamed that he was not worthy to touch her body, much less insert his vile thing into it. But the orc just laughed and said it was time to start. The goddess groaned at the sheer volume, and the orc praised her for being so narrow. The orc laughed and shouted that he was fucking the goddess herself, and she bitterly realized that she herself was enjoying it. The orc asked her if she didn't want him to stop and drag his friend out. He noticed the goddess's grip on him growing tighter and tighter. The orc said that he was pleased since their feelings were now mutual and they should please each other. The goddess only screamed back, but more and more with pleasure than terror. The orc announced that he had already done everything and added that in fact, people like him can do 100 times in a row. The goddess begged the orc to stop and not make her feel so good again. But the orc replied that this was just the beginning and now he was ready to move on to the second time. Chapter 84. Rael thought it would be a good idea to take the body of the Lord of Hell for his Museum of Vengeance and create a beautiful exhibit out of it. But alas, the gods, when they die, their bodies completely disappear. And if you can't take the body, then you need to make it a part of yourself. Rael felt a surge of energy from eating the heart and decided that now it was time for him to return to Earth. The orc informed the goddess of love that this was the 120th time they had done this. She just wondered where she could have gone wrong when she chose Rael as her hero, or when she gave him magic, or maybe when she let him go to hell. After all, she is the goddess of love, who received the best men of this era and was to be loved and revered forever. But why is it that she is now dying under the dreadful orc in such a vile state? The goddess of love remembered how she was supposed to become an absolute god and all she had to do was restore the body parts she had sacrificed for Rael. And if her body recovered, she might even be able to escape from the hideous monster that was raping her. But now she, the absolute goddess, is on the verge of extinction and only begs for salvation. The orc said that if the goddess broke down and goes out 120th time is the limit for her. The orc thought that this would make the other gods angry with him, even though he was very ashamed. And he was just too excited from his first time with the goddess. The orc decided that now he needed to get rid of the body somehow and hide all the evidence. He came up with the idea of burying the goddess so that no one would know what had happened to her. The goddess began to call for help and try to escape from the clutches of the monster. She asked the orc to stop. But the crunch of her bones was cut off by a desperate cry, and the orc said that now she looked like nothing more than a lump of mud. Burying the remains of the goddess of love, the orc sincerely regretted that he would not be able to have fun with her again. Although the memories of her pleasant body will stay with him forever. The fallen angels began to ask each other where such strong dark magic came from. Raoul said that since they were all waiting for him here, he was grateful for such attention. The hero was surprised that the Hell God's body was still here and thought that they were not disappearing as quickly as he expected. The fallen angels began to shout that a new god had been born and they must now serve and worship him. They shouted that the age of the old gods had come to an end and that they needed Rael's blessing. The fallen angels claimed that Rael was their master and could give them any orders they wanted. Rael replied that since they were ready to do whatever he ordered, he needed to think carefully and decide what to do first. Chapter 85. The fallen angels begged Rael to give them his first order. The hero realized that when he defeated the god of hell, he became a new ruler for the local inhabitants. Rael was surprised that such a primitive system worked in the world of the gods, and now all the status and abilities of the former master passed to him. The fallen angel said that in order for Rael to use his former master's abilities, the absolute god must officially grant him the status of a god. Rael replied that he now understood why he did not feel a new strength in himself. Rael thought that in order to use his new powers, he would have to re-sign a contract with God, and all he can use now is to exterminate sinners, as well as use the sacred treasure crystal. Rael stated that he didn't have time to go to the absolute god, so getting new abilities should be postponed until later, when he was free from more important matters. Rael ordered the fallen angels to prepare a dungeon for all those whom he took revenge on, because they are destined to spend a lot of time here. Lucas Eckhart and Dr. Ren Bennick were outraged by Rael's decision. They reminded him that without their help, he would not have been able to defeat the god of hell, and so they demand a completely different attitude and gratitude in the form of salvation from suffering. But Rael replied that it was only easier for him without them, so he didn't owe anyone anything. Rael did promise to make the prisoners' conditions in Hell's prison much better than they had been under the previous master. The hero announced to the fallen angels that his first order as the new god of Hell obliges them to look for new ideas for improving the prison. And those who have ideas can speak out right now, because they plan to manage Hell together. Rael reminded the fallen angels that they had won that last bet after all. The hero said that it seems that before him Hell was really a terrible place for all inhabitants, and not just for sinners. The fallen angel replied that this was indeed the case and that their former master had kept them in the same conditions as ordinary sinners. Their lives depended entirely on the will of the gods, and they had no rights or freedoms. The fallen angel told how their good news was presented by the god of Hell as his own, and for any offense they were punished with death. So they all worked in terrible conditions and in constant fear. At the same time, the whole situation and environment was terribly tasteless, but no one dared to point it out or change anything, because everything was punishable by death, and the god of Hell himself could not stand any criticism or comments. Rael replied that it was all clear to him now what every fallen angel went through. The hero suggested starting from this day to create a new hell together. Rael exclaimed that now there would be a new kind and understanding master for everyone, and he would listen to the opinion of each of his subjects. Therefore, the only goal for everyone is to create a new beautiful hell together. The fallen angels cheered Rael's decision and chanted, "Glory to the new Lord of Hell." Rael explained that he can't stay in this place forever, so one of the fallen angels becomes responsible for Hell during his absence. Rael advised the person in charge not to worry and asked if he had any ideas for Christina's dungeon. After all, she was the first person to beg for her life. The person in charge suggested forcing Saint Christina to constantly pray for her life to be spared. Rael replied that he liked the idea and needed to create such a dungeon for her as soon as possible. Raoul asked everyone who has any ideas to feel free to come to him. Also, the person in charge during his absence should listen to the ideas of those who want to speak out. Rael said that it was time to get to work and create new dungeons. The hero thought that it would be interesting and he would look forward to it with impatience. The prisoners began to shout that this was complete nonsense and they should be released immediately. But the fallen angels silently obeyed their new master's orders. Rael exclaimed that it was time for him to leave, and so he left everything to the fallen angels. The capital was shrouded in smoke from fires and pogroms. 2 months had passed since Rael's disappearance, and the people in the city were divided into two camps, the royalists and the Rawlists. A serious power struggle broke out between them, which led to the decline of the capital. The fights were fierce and everyone tried to prove their case. The royalists accused Rael's supporters of praising the vile murderer, and the Rawlists admired the hero Raoul and believed that his guilt was fabricated by the royal family. Raoul's supporters sought to seize power and advocated that Raoul should become the main one in the city. The royalists said that this was complete nonsense, because Raoul died a long time ago and will not return, so the actions of fanatics are meaningless. Each of the parties destroyed the competitor with special cruelty and pleasure. Neither the elderly nor children were spared, and many people died who did not speak for either side at all. The monks of the cult of Rael found themselves in a difficult situation, because the royalists organized an attack that was successful. It was decided to inform the chief abbot of the cult of Rael about this. He was informed that an emergency situation had occurred and his intervention was needed. The rector of the church and the head of the cult was the former fiancé of Princess Victoria. Chapter 86. The high priest continued to pray and ask Rael to protect all of his followers. The monk reported that in the 7th arrondissement, royalists used Molotov cocktails and there are many wounded. The assistant chief priest replied that one should not forget the main commandment of the cult of Rael. After all, you just need to desperately pray to the great Rael for forgiveness and wait for salvation. And the high priest never ordered the use of force. The monk said that he understood everything perfectly, but it was all because of the novices who got out of control. And they claim that they are acting to take care of the cult of Rael. Dolores thought that the warlike acolytes were a problem, even though the high priest himself had ordered everyone who relied on them to be accepted. Dolores decided that it would be best to explain everything to Emil in the evening. She promised the monk that she would talk to the chief priest and clarify everything. Emil prayed constantly and rarely paid attention to anyone. Dolores recalled how after the execution of the Holy Virgin Christina, the inhabitants of the capital began to fear the revenge of the former hero Raoul. However, Raoul did not appear again, but people were happy about this for a very short time. After all, the capital was hit by another bad weather. A terrible flood that hadn't happened in hundreds of years flooded the city and destroyed all the crops in the area. The river overflowed its banks and many people died. After the water subsided, a terrible infection spread through the city and people began to die due to the disease. Death was quick and painful. At some point, a rumor began to emerge that all this was the result of Rael's curse, and people became even more afraid of the former hero. But then they decided to beg Rael to show mercy. Such people became more and more. These people turned to Emil Ockel for help and accepted him as the main priest of the cult. Then the cult began to grow and people began to call themselves novices of the cult of Rael. Novices began to preach their interests among the inhabitants of the city, sometimes even forcing people to beg for forgiveness in front of Rael. The activities of the cult of Rael immediately spread to the entire capital, and all the people found out about their oppression of the infected. Many people were dissatisfied with the activities of the cult of Rael and strongly advocated its destruction. Thus, the king's faction was formed. Each of the parties began to arm themselves and the clashes escalated into real battles. No one wanted to give in and spared no expense on weapons. All residents of the capital eventually split into two camps. Some wanted the restoration of the country under the leadership of the king, and others stood up for Rael, for the fact that only he can save everyone with his mercy. As a result, the entire capital turned into a battlefield where there were no rules. Dolores interrupted her son's prayer and told him there was trouble. Therefore, he, as the high priest, must give his answer. But Emil didn't want to hear anything, just begged for Rael's forgiveness. Dolores tried to calm her son down and promised that she would think up everything for him, because he was so kind that he could not understand such terrible things. At this time, the demon army headquarters decided to discuss the situation in the capital. The head of the civil administration, Damien, asked the captain of the Night Order, Kilo, how things were going in the Kurtz kingdom. The captain said that in the residential areas of the capital, violent civil clashes do not subside. As a result, the port city of Toruta remained virtually unguarded, and the demons freed by the princess continue to win it back. Captain Kilo said that now was the perfect time to try to break free of Kurtz's control completely. The captain asked if the princess was feeling better, but Damien said it wasn't. She's still sitting in her room, just looking out the window. Chapter 87. Damien said that the maids somehow managed to feed Princess Deodora, but she was still losing weight and it was scary to look at her. Princess Deodora is the only surviving descendant of the Demon Lord. She was born to a human mother from the previous Demon Lord. She was raised in secret outside the castle, but Kilo and Damien always watched over and guarded her peace. But when she was 14, her parents died and she was completely orphaned. She was sheltered by her half-sister, the Demon Lord's older sister. It happened 6 months before the hero Rael attacked the Demon Castle. The Demon Lord ordered Deodora to hide and live where she would be hidden from prying eyes. And even in the Demon Castle, only a handful of those closest to her knew of her existence. For this reason, before the attack of the hero Rael, Princess Deodora was taken away from the castle. But then, after those events, Princess Deodora disappeared from sight, and Kilo and Damien were unable to find her in the vast forests. And just recently, Princess Deodora herself returned to the Demon Castle, but she was completely broken and didn't say a single word. After the death of the former hero Rael, Princess Deodora lost her enemy. After all, revenge for the death of the Demon Lord's older sister was her life's goal. After that, Deodora realized what had happened and closed in on herself. Captain Kilo said that to restore the country, they needed Princess Deodora to recover. Over and over again, Deodora replayed the terrible events she had experienced as a slave trader. She also recalled how she took revenge on the hero Raoul, and these terrible images could not free her wounded mind. Captain Kilo reported that he had just arrived from a campaign, but Deodora did not respond. Damien explained that he had been trying to distract the princess for more than a month, but all his attempts were useless. It was as if her soul had left her body. Kilo asked how they could bring her to her senses. The captain tried to tell Deodora that when they had recovered everything King Kurtz had taken, it was time to rebuild the country. And the Kur's capital is currently in the midst of a civil war, so it's time for the demon nation to get back on its feet. Kilo asked Deodora to hear her voice, but the princess didn't respond. Suddenly, the sound of glass cut off the captain's words and a bird flew into the room. Kilo said there was a letter on the paw, and Damien said that it must be Kurtz's doing, because you can feel his magic. The captain handed the letter to Deodora, and the princess read that the hero Rael had risen from the dead. During the battle in the capital, a bright flash blinded everyone in the area. The girl said that they finally got there, because it took them 20 days to get there. One of the newcomers said that this place is too noisy, although the magic is still working. Atticus said that his whole body aches from such a path, and the girl reminded him that apparently he is already an old man in his 23 years, so he can safely retire. Residents of the capital began to ask the guests whose side they were on and in every possible way annoy them. Atticus said that he couldn't just kill people, even those who were very much in the way. The girl said that they don't care who is for whom in this fight, because they came to get into the royal castle. Therefore, everyone should make way and not interfere with the walk. The residents realized that they were state magicians. One of the magicians said that they were late and needed to go to the General Assembly as soon as possible. She said Caleb was right and we should hurry. The villagers immediately spread a rumor about the mages who had arrived and how they had injured people. She told her companions that it would be good if the Master Mage's plan worked.